thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak here about Regional, which is a program in the Netherlands, a public-private partnership program, where we cooperate with Dutch businesses and Dutch knowledge institutes in accelerating the transition to a regenerative agriculture sector that is also profitable and so financially and socially sustainable. Let me share with you first briefly why we took the initiative to set up this program, share with you the challenges we see to realize the ambitions of a regenerative agriculture sector, and share with you briefly the program, how it is set up. In the Netherlands, and I think in many countries, we've, I think since World War II, built a system that is really focused on maximizing efficiency. It's about producing cheap food, predictable food, standardized food. We do that in monopopulations or series of monopopulations. And we have technology that basically dictates what you produce and how you produce it. And that's brought us a lot. Food production worldwide has been growing tremendously, also in the Netherlands. But we run into all kinds of barriers. Environmental, so there's about a lot of planetary boundaries that we cross that are often local boundaries, and I think they're all very relevant in the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands we do have a lot of pressure because of nitrogen, we have a lot of biodiversity loss, we have problems with water quality, and so there's a lot to be done on the planetary boundaries. And at the same time, farmers are, well, caught in what you can say a commodity trap. So they produce a commodity, and actually in the Netherlands, most of what is produced in land-based, soil-based agriculture is basically potatoes, sugar beet, onions, and then grass and maize for dairy production. And all of that is 80% or more is exported. So it's a commodity product. The price is set on the world market. And input costs are ever increasing, which makes it, well, the margin for the farmer very, very low. And the value added of primary production as part of the total value chain is limited. And farmers are basically competing for land, for the available land, and land prices are ever rising. In the Netherlands, 1 hectare, the cost of 1 hectare is more than 100,000 euros. And then as a consequence, there's a lot of consolidation. Every 20 years, the number of farmers halves. So we need to get to a system that basically can counter these trends, where we are within planetary boundaries, and it's also leading to a good business model for farmers. And we think we need a different paradigm on 3 elements. So on ambition, we've always targeted maximizing efficiency, volume growth, and then decreasing the negative impacts per kilogram. And we need to get to a system where we aim at combining food production with positive impact on the environment. Secondly, the way we work and how we approach sustainability issues, we've always worked on supply chains, focusing on one commodity and making that as efficient as possible. Often then the off-takers prescribing what farmers should do. And we need to get to a system where we have a much more integrated view, where we combine the landscape perspective, where we look at value chains rather than supply chains, and also then combine multiple value chains in one landscape. And thirdly, the breadth of solutions, we need to get to much more diversity. We've worked with building one-size-fits-all solutions, and are then very dogmatic about that, again, prescribed from the off-takers, and we need to get to much more diversity. And we think we can get to that with regenerative agriculture. So that's the second part. What is regenerative agriculture, and what do we see as the challenges? The way we look at regenerative agriculture, and we've defined this in a previous public-private partnership program, is really focusing on outcomes. That's one thing that's very important. It's taking soil health as the starting point, with the aim to create positive impact on environmental issues, but also on all the farmer business model and social topics. We looked at, for that, in our program, we have 9 topics that we focus on. Well, the time is too short to name them all. And we look at different system levels in this integrated approach. So at soil level, at field level, for example, to get to a regenerative system, we need to have a lot of soil biodiversity and a good soil food web. For example, at farm level, the water usage needs to be less than what's naturally available. For example, at landscape level, we need to have sufficient biodiversity and habitat for traveling of biodiversity. And at the other then at the other extreme, at the global level, we need to sequester more carbon with nature and agriculture combined than the emissions we cause. Well, clearly this thing at the global level, their farms can compensate for each other, even countries can compensate for each other. But what we need to achieve at field level, we need to achieve that at every field. In the Netherlands, there are about 200 farms or more that are practicing regenerative practices already for quite some time. And well, I see there's something going wrong here with the layout, but no worry. We've identified 64 clusters of regenerative practices that they practice, and some of them you can read here, and most you can't. And clearly, no one farm can use all these practices. So there's a lot of diversity also between these 200 farms. They're very different. They have a few things in common, and I think what they all have as a common thread is they focus on feeding a living soil and optimizing photosynthesis throughout the year, and do that by minimizing chemical synthetic inputs. So that's the common thread. They also have a couple of things in common more as people. Although they are very diverse, I think what we see is they have a business model that is built on a niche where they have a good price premium. Secondly, it took them a long time to get it right and to get the soil, to get back to a living soil. Thirdly, they did do a lot of trial and error. And fourthly, they invented most of it by themselves. And this is what we identified as 4 barriers for scaling up regenerative agriculture. If we want to make it the new normal, we need to have business models that are not dependent on a price premium in a niche. Secondly, we need to have ways to cover the transition and to make the transition viable. Thirdly, we need to get to much more predictive models. And fourthly, we need to get much more knowledge into the sector. And so these are 4 action lines that our program is built on. We aim to work with 100 farms to make their farm model innovative farms, to make it more repeatable and less dependent on a niche. Secondly, we aim to support 1,000 farms in making the transition to a regenerative model. And thirdly, we have then a scientific action line, which is then aimed at building predictive models. And we have a human capital action line where we aim to train 10,000 people in the Netherlands, farmers, future farmers, farm advisors on regenerative agriculture. There's a lot of things I can elaborate on more during the break. Briefly, to get the business model right, we think we need to work at farm level on savings on input costs, which also can lead to resilience at farm level. At the landscape level, we look at valorization of ecosystem services. So can we get payments for biodiversity, for water, for carbon sequestration? Thirdly, at the food value chain level, we work with value chain partners on how can we valorize regenerative production. And for them, it's also security of supply in the long run. We work with financial institutions on the transition finance. And then with government, we have to look at regulation that supports the transition, but also in creating a level playing field. And how do we get rid of the externalities of the conventional agriculture? Let me stop here. Thanks very much for your attention, and looking forward to the discussions.
To what extent do you think ReGNL model is exportable? We had, in some points of view, this discussion last night. What conditions, let's say, must exist in a national context, such as Romania, for such an initiative to work? Yes, please.
Sorry. So the conditions to make this work, well, I think it's important that you work with a broad coalition, where I think the farmer perspective, that's also the way we've set up our program. It's very important that you create a program where the farmer perspective is basically leading, and farmers can take ownership for their transition, but with a lot of support from both knowledge institutes, private sector, and government, and then work together in a way where we have equal say, so to say. So there's big partners, big companies, but there's also smaller companies that may have very inspiring and good views, and they all should be equal partners.
Okay, thank you. Christina, please.
This route chosen by the Netherlands, because really you are champions and well recognized for good reasons, I would say, in the European Union. Is it rather policy driven, or is something the Dutch farmers came to the conclusion that they need? It developed organically and is really the salutary solution for this challenging time we go through.
So your question is so basically who took the initiative? Is this government driven or this is government funded, but it is actually the initiative of it's more bottom up. So it's the large Dutch cooperatives, so the dairy cooperative Friesland Campina and the arable farming cooperative Schouten and the input buying cooperative Agri-Food, together with also more grassroots organizations that you probably have never heard of here in Romania, because they are Dutch grassroots organizations that took the initiative to make a proposal for this program. And then there was a government fund called the National Growth Fund, which was actually at building sustainable earning capacity for the whole of the Dutch economy. So we made a proposal, bottom up, for that fund, and we got funded. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will certainly come back to some of these threads later in the day, or maybe at the networking session. We move on. Thank you once again, and applause, please, for our guests from the Netherlands.